Inmate number 45873, Stephen Olmedo. You've got mail. The guard yelled, tossing a yellowish envelope through the bars. After 25 years, I'm still just a number in this concrete hell. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was from Michael, my son, the same one who had sent me to this place, the same one who had testified against me, saying I had stolen materials and money from Montgomery Construction, where we both worked. The same person I had sacrificed everything for, even my own meals so he could get an education. And now, after 5 years of not writing, he decided to show up in my life again. Before I continue with my story, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. After 25 years in prison, your support means a lot to me. My trembling hands opened the envelope as I sat on the edge of the metal bed that has been my companion for a quarter of a century. The thin mattress is already molded to my body, a constant reminder that this place has become my home by force. Dad, the letter began, there's something you need to know. Daniel, your grandson, wants to meet you. He's 15 and has a lot of questions. I told him you're in prison for a mistake, for a minor theft. He doesn't know the whole truth. My heart skipped a beat. A grandson. I never knew Michael had a son. 25 years is a long time to be absent from someone's life. 25 years is a lifetime stolen by the betrayal of my own son. The boy insists. I thought you could write to him. As long as you stick to the version I've told him, it would be better for everyone. I crumpled the letter in fury. Even now, Michael was still controlling the narrative, still lying to the world about who the real thief was. He, who had pocketed the $3 million meant for construction materials. He, who had forged my signature on the documents. He, who had planted evidence in our small house, the one I built with my own hands, brick by brick, over 20 years of honest work. "Stephen, everything okay?" asked Ramirez, the oldest guard, one of the few who treated me like a human being and not like scum. "My son wrote to me," I answered, my voice breaking. "I have a grandson." "Wow, that's good news," said Ramirez, moving closer to the bars. At 58, he had been working here almost as long as I'd been locked up. "So, why do you look so upset?" I stared at Ramirez. In all these years, I had never told anyone in prison the whole truth. Everyone assumed I was guilty, like the rest. What was the point of defending my innocence? I tried in the early years. I shouted my truth to anyone who would listen, but all I got were beatings and time in solitary. Because that boy believes a lie. I finally answered. He thinks his father is an honest man and his grandfather is a thief, when the truth is the exact opposite. Ramirez looked at me curiously. He had probably heard 1,000 similar stories from inmates swearing their innocence. "My son Michael stole $3 million from the construction company where we worked," I continued, feeling it was time someone else knew my story. "He forged documents, planted evidence in our house, and framed me. I was 42 then. Now I'm 67, and I'm still here, while he has enjoyed my money, my house, and raised a son who doesn't even know I exist." "And you could never prove it?" Ramirez asked, now clearly interested. How could I? It was his word against mine, and he had an education, connections. He knew how to talk. I was just a construction worker who barely finished grade school. Besides, the evidence seemed clear. The money was found under the floor of my bedroom. My signature was on the documents, and Michael cried in front of the judge, saying he felt betrayed by his own father. Silence surrounded us. In the distance, the usual prison screams could be heard, but in our corridor, for a moment, it was just Ramirez, me, and the truth I had kept for so long. "My wife Linda died 20 years ago believing I was a thief," I added bitterly. "She never wanted to visit me. She went to her grave thinking I had thrown away 30 years of marriage for greed." Ramirez scratched his chin thoughtfully. "You know, Stephen, my brother-in-law is a lawyer. Not one of the expensive ones, but he knows his stuff. Maybe you could talk to him." I let out a bitter laugh. After 25 years, the deadlines for appeals expired decades ago. Besides, what new evidence could I present now? I don't know, but the boy, your grandson, deserves to know the truth, don't you think? His words hit me like a sledgehammer. Daniel, my grandson, a 15-year-old boy, living a lie, admiring a father who was a thief and a traitor, a boy who could end up following in Michael's footsteps if no one intervened. "What's your brother-in-law's name?" I finally asked, feeling a small spark of hope ignite after 25 years of darkness. "Gilbert Montesinos," Ramirez replied. "I'll talk to him tonight." That same afternoon, sitting at the metal table in the common dining hall, I began to write a letter not to Michael but to Daniel, my grandson, my blood. The boy who could be my redemption, or the final nail in this concrete and iron coffin that has been my life for a quarter of a century. Dear Daniel, I wrote with my clumsy handwriting, that of a man who learned to write as an adult. I'm your grandfather, Stephen. There's a lot I need to tell you, but first, I want to know about you. What do you like to do? How are you doing in school? Your father told me you want to meet me, and nothing would make me happier. I paused, hesitating whether to continue with the charade Michael had created or to start planting seeds of the truth. I decided that, for now, I would play along. I needed to earn the boy's trust first. 3 days later, I was visited by the lawyer, Montesinos. He was a short man with thick glasses and a serious expression. He looked me over, evaluating me as we sat in the visitor's room. My brother-in-law, Ramirez, told me about your case. He said bluntly, I have to be honest, Mr. Olmedo. After so much time, the chances of reopening your case are almost zero. I know, I replied. But I want to try, not just for me, but for my grandson. I don't want him to grow up admiring a thief. Montesinos nodded, took out a notebook, and started taking notes as I told him everything all over again. How Michael had started working with me at the construction company, how he had been promoted quickly thanks to his education, how he had gained the trust of the owner, Mr. Montgomery, and how the money for the biggest project we'd ever had finally disappeared. Was there any witness who could have corroborated your version? Montesinos asked. Yes, Sarah Quiroz, my neighbor. She saw Michael come home with a suitcase the night before I was arrested, but when she tried to testify, Michael had already convinced her that I was involved in shady business. He told her the suitcase contained tools he had bought from overseas. And is this Sarah still alive? I don't know. It's been many years since I've heard anything from my old neighborhood. Montesinos closed his notebook. I'm going to investigate Mr. Olmedo. I'm not promising anything, but there are modern forensic techniques that could help us if we can access the original documents. Forgeries can now be detected with methods that didn't exist 25 years ago. For the first time in a long time, I felt my heart beat with something like hope. But I knew I had to be cautious. Broken hopes hurt more than having no hope at all. There's something you should know, I added. Michael wrote to me, asking me to maintain his version of the story for Daniel. He says he told him, I'm here for a mistake, a minor theft. Montesinos frowned. That could complicate things. If we decide to proceed, at some point we'll have to confront your son, and the boy will find out everything. I know, I replied with regret. But I've already lost 25 years of my life protecting a lie. I won't lose the years I have left, too. That night, in the solitude of my cell, I reread Michael's letter. There was something strange about his sudden interest in connecting me with Daniel. In 25 years, Michael had barely visited me a dozen times, and always to make sure I was still sticking to his version of events. Why now? What had changed? The answer came a week later, when I received my first letter from Daniel. Dear Grandpa, it began in neat, orderly handwriting, very different from mine. I'm so glad I can finally write to you. Dad never wanted me to before, but now that I'm researching our family for a school project, he had to give in. School project. There was the answer. Michael hadn't wanted to connect us. He had been forced by circumstances. I have a lot of questions about you and what happened. Dad just says you made a mistake, that you took something that wasn't yours, and that's why you're there. But the teacher has asked us to investigate our family stories in detail, and I need to know more. My heart raced. This school project could be the opportunity I had waited for 25 years, the chance for someone to dig for the truth. I've also been talking to Mrs. Quiroz. The letter continued. Do you remember her? She lives 3 houses down from ours. She's told me stories about you, about how you built our house brick by brick. She says you were the hardest working man in the neighborhood, Sarah Quiroz. She was still alive and, apparently, no longer believed Michael's version. The most important piece of the puzzle was back in play. I'd like to visit you, Grandpa. I want to meet you in person. Dad says it's not possible for now, but I have a feeling he's hiding something important from me. What do you think? I finished reading the letter with tears in my eyes. Daniel was no ordinary kid. He was perceptive, curious, and above all, seemed to have an innate sense of justice. My grandson, my blood. That night, instead of answering Daniel's letter, I wrote one to Sarah Quiroz. If she was talking to my grandson, maybe now she would be willing to listen to my side of the story. To remember what she really saw that night 25 years ago. Maybe, finally, the truth had a chance. Lights out, Olmedo, ordered the guard on duty. Time for bed. I obeyed, tucking my unfinished letter under the mattress. I would finish it tomorrow and send it with Ramirez's help. For the first time in 25 years, I went to bed with a plan, with a clear purpose. Michael had stolen my freedom, my money, my reputation, and my family. But I wouldn't let him steal my grandson, too. Not when I finally had a chance to clear my name and reclaim even a fragment of the life that was stolen from me. As I stared at the ceiling of my cell in the darkness, a sentence echoed in my mind. 25 years is a long time, but not too long for the truth to come out. Not too long for justice, at last, to come into my life. 2 weeks passed before I received a reply from Sarah Quiroz. During that time, my mind was torn between hope and fear. What if Michael found out I was trying to contact her? What if she still believed his version? The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Ramirez handed it to me with a knowing smile. "Looks like you've got an admirer, Stephen," he joked as he passed the letter through the bars. My trembling hands could barely hold the paper. The neat, orderly handwriting, typical of a retired teacher like Sarah, instantly took me back to another time, when we were neighbors, when I was a free man. "Dear Stephen," the letter began, "your letter has left me speechless. For years I believed Michael's version, but there was always something that didn't sit right with his story. Now that I've met your grandson Daniel, the doubts have returned with greater force." My heart skipped a beat. Sarah had doubts. It was more than I had hoped for. "The boy is extraordinary, Stephen. He has your eyes, your way of observing everything with attention, of not missing a single detail, and he asks questions, many questions, questions that Michael avoids answering." I smiled, imagining my grandson, with my eyes, with my curiosity. "Daniel came to see me a month ago, asking about you for his school project. I realized that Michael had told him a very watered-down version of what happened. He told him you had stolen construction materials, not $3 million. He made him believe you were serving a disproportionate sentence for a minor crime." I clenched my fists, typical of Michael, always manipulating the truth to fit his needs. But what really made me doubt was what happened next. "Daniel asked me about the night before your arrest. He wanted to know if I remembered anything unusual. And then I remembered the suitcase, Stephen. That big suitcase Michael was carrying when he arrived at your house that night. I remembered how he protected it, how he wouldn't let go of it for a moment. My breathing quickened. That suitcase, the one that probably contained the stolen money before Michael hid it under my bedroom floor to frame me. I told Daniel about the suitcase, without implying anything, just as a detail I remembered. The expression on his face changed. He told me his father had told him that you had arrived that night with a mysterious bag, that you had acted suspiciously. Do you see, Stephen?" Michael flipped the story. He put you in his place. I closed my eyes, trying to control the rage that was washing over me. 25 years. 25 years in this cell because of those lies. "There's something else you should know," Sarah's letter continued. "The house you built with so much effort is gone. Michael sold it years ago. According to Daniel, his father squandered all the money on bad investments and gambling. Now, they live in a small, rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. I felt a lump in my throat. My house, the one I built brick by brick for 20 years, the one that represented every drop of sweat, every sacrifice, sold by the son who betrayed me. Stephen, I want to help you. I think after all this time I deserve to know the whole truth. If you're willing to tell me, maybe we can find a way to clear your name. For Daniel's sake, that boy deserves to know who his grandfather really is." I finished reading the letter with tears in my eyes. For the first time in 25 years, someone outside these walls was willing to listen to my side of the story. Someone important from the past was beginning to doubt Michael. That same afternoon I was visited by the lawyer, Montesinos. His expression was more animated than in our first meeting. "I have news, Mr. Olmedo," he said as he sat down across from me in the visitor's room. "I've been investigating your case, and there's something interesting. The original documents from Montgomery Construction still exist. They're archived at the courthouse, but we can request access to them. And would that help us?" I asked, trying not to get my hopes up too high. "Potentially, yes. If your son forged your signature, as you claim, a modern forensic analysis could prove it. Today's techniques can detect pressure, angles, and patterns that were impossible to analyze 25 years ago." For the first time, hope seemed to have a real, tangible basis. "There's something else," Montesinos added, lowering his voice. "I've contacted a former employee of Montgomery Construction, Rudolph Guzman. He worked in accounting when the theft occurred. I remember him. I said, trying to picture the man. A thin, quiet guy. That's him. He's retired now, but he says he remembers some irregularities in the records from that time. Things that seemed strange to him, but he never mentioned because he was afraid of losing his job. What kind of irregularities? Transactions that didn't add up. Records of materials that didn't match the actual purchases. Guzman believes someone in the company had been siphoning off money for a while before the big robbery, and he has his suspicions about who it might be. My mind was racing. Was it possible that Michael had been stealing for months before the big hit? That the theft of the $3 million was just the culmination of a much more elaborate plan? And is he willing to talk now, after all this time? I asked. He's sick, Mr. Olmedo. Terminal cancer. He says he wants to set things right before he goes. I nodded, understanding that feeling perfectly. When death is near, lies weigh too heavily. There's a problem, however, Montesinos continued. To reopen your case, we need more than suspicions and vague memories. We need concrete proof, and your son has been very careful to cover his tracks. What do you suggest, then? That we follow two parallel paths. I'll try to get access to the original documents and talk to Guzman to get a sworn statement. In the meantime, you should maintain contact with your grandson and Mrs. Quiroz. If Michael has been lying for so long, it's likely he's made mistakes. That he's contradicted himself at some point. Daniel could be the key to discovering those contradictions. I nodded, thinking about the letter I needed to write to my grandson. How much could I reveal without putting him in an impossible position with his father? How could I win his trust without destroying his world? One more thing, Mr. Olmedo, Montesinos added as he picked up his briefcase. I've spoken with Judge Isaac Montalvo about your case. He's known for reviewing old sentences when new evidence appears. He's willing to listen to us if we get something solid. That night, sitting in my cell, I wrote 2 letters. The first, to Sarah, telling her the whole truth, every detail I could remember about those fateful days. I explained how Michael had risen quickly in the construction company thanks to his education, how he had won the owner's trust, and how, finally, the money had disappeared. I told her about the moment the police arrived at our house, how they found the money under my bedroom floor, a hiding place I didn't know existed. I told her about the trial, about how the public defender assigned to me barely bothered to defend me, about how the judge already had his verdict decided before hearing my side. The second letter was to Daniel. This one was much harder to write. I couldn't tell him the whole truth. Not yet. But I also didn't want to keep perpetuating Michael's lie. Dear Daniel, I finally wrote, I'm very glad to hear from you and that you're interested in learning our family history for your school project. The truth is always important, even if it's sometimes painful or complicated. I paused, thinking carefully about my next words. You ask me about what happened, about why I'm here. The version you know is incomplete, Daniel. It wasn't a simple theft of materials that brought me to this place. It was something much more serious and complex. Something that involves people we both love. It was the closest I could get to the truth without directly accusing Michael. There's something you can do for me, if you really want to help me with your project. Talk to Mrs. Quiroz. She was there when it all happened. Ask her specifically about the night before my arrest. Ask her who came home with a large suitcase. This detail may seem insignificant, but it's more important than you can imagine. I hoped Daniel would understand the hint, that he would start to question his father's version. I would also like you to talk to a man named Rudolph Guzman. He was the accountant at the construction company where your father and I worked. Maybe he can offer you a different perspective for your project. It was risky to mention Guzman. If Michael found out, he might try to silence him before he could talk to Daniel. But I needed my grandson to hear other versions, to start piecing the puzzle together himself. As for visiting me, I'd love to meet you in person, Daniel. There's a process you need to follow to get permission. Talk to Mrs. Quiroz. She can help you with that. Your father doesn't need to know, if that makes things easier. I ended the letter with words of affection for a grandson I had never seen, but who already held an important place in my heart. I hoped Daniel would be brave and perceptive enough to follow the clues I was leaving him. The response came faster than I expected. Just 3 days later, Ramirez handed me an envelope with Daniel's now familiar handwriting. Dear Grandpa, it began. I spoke with Mrs. Quiroz, as you suggested. She told me something very strange. She says she clearly remembers that it was my father who arrived that night with a large suitcase, not you. But Dad has always told me that you were the one who came home late and acting suspiciously. My heart raced. Daniel was starting to see the contradictions. I asked Dad about this, and he got very nervous. He said Mrs. Quiroz is old and confused, that she mixes up memories. But she doesn't seem confused at all when she talks about you. In fact, she remembers in great detail how you built our house, how you worked even on Sundays to finish one more room. I smiled sadly. That house represented every sacrifice I had made, every extra hour I had worked, and now it was gone. I've also tried to contact Mr. Guzman, but I haven't found him yet. Dad says he died years ago, but Mrs. Quiroz thinks he might still be alive. Maybe in a city out of state, where he has family. I frowned. It was obvious Michael was trying to prevent Daniel from talking to Guzman. That only confirmed that the accountant knew something important. About visiting you, Mrs. Quiroz explained the process to me. I need permission from a responsible adult, since I'm a minor. She has offered to accompany me. We could go next Saturday. If that's okay with you. I haven't told Dad anything yet. He's been very strange lately, very nervous. I think he's having money problems. He's been selling things from the house, even the collection of antique watches that he said belonged to my maternal grandfather. Antique watches. I had never had a collection like that. Another one of Michael's deceptions. One last thing, Grandpa. I found an old box in Dad's closet. It has old documents, photos, receipts. I'm going through it little by little when he's not home. Maybe I'll find something useful to better understand our family history. The letter ended with Daniel's promise to visit me the following Saturday. My grandson was taking the initiative, investigating on his own. The pride I felt was mixed with worry. What would Michael do if he discovered that Daniel was digging into his past? 2 days later I received an unexpected visit. The lawyer Montesinos arrived, accompanied by a man I didn't recognize at first. He was older than me, thin to the point of emaciation, with a pallor that spoke of a long illness. Mr. Olmedo, Montesinos said as they both sat down across from me. This is Rudolph Guzman. I stared at him, trying to find in that worn face the accountant I had known 25 years ago. His eyes, however, were still the same. Observant, attentive eyes that seemed to register every detail. Rudolph, I murmured, extending my hand to shake his. It's been many years. Too many, he replied in a weak voice. Too many years of keeping quiet about what I should have said at the time. Montesinos intervenit. Mr. Guzman has agreed to give a sworn statement about the irregularities he detected at Montgomery Construction before the theft of the $3 million. Guzman nodded. Michael started siphoning off money 6 months before the big robbery, Stephen. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. I kept the books. I saw the numbers that didn't add up, but Mr. Montgomery trusted him completely, and I needed my job. Why did you decide to speak now? I asked, though I already guessed the answer. I'm dying, he replied bluntly. Pancreatic cancer, terminal stage. I have 2 months, maybe 3, and I don't want to go taking this truth with me. I nodded, respecting his decision. There's something else, Guzman added. Michael didn't act alone. He had an accomplice inside the company, someone who helped him forge documents, create fake invoices. Who? I asked, surprised by this new information. Lawrence Montgomery, Guzman replied. The owner's son. The revelation left me speechless. The owner's son involved in the robbery? That would explain why the investigation had focused so quickly on me, why no one had questioned Michael's version. Do you have proof of this? Montesinos asked. Always practical. I have copies of some documents I kept as insurance, Guzman replied. Fake invoices with Lawrence's signature, emails between him and Michael, discussing adjustments to the accounting books. It wasn't enough to accuse them directly. That's why I never used them. But now, combined with my testimony, and if we get the original documents for a forensic analysis, we could reopen the case. Montesinos completed, a gleam of hope in his eyes. While Guzman and Montesinos discussed the legal details, my mind was with Daniel. My grandson would be here in 3 days. I would finally meet the boy who carried my blood, who had begun to unravel the web of lies woven by his father. And I also thought about Michael, the son who had sacrificed his own father for money. The son who now, apparently, had squandered all his ill-gotten fortune. What would he do when he discovered we were after the truth? How far would he go to protect his lie? The answer to that question terrified me, because I knew my son better than anyone, and I knew that, when cornered, Michael was capable of anything. Saturday arrived slower than ever. I woke up before dawn, unable to sleep from excitement and nervousness. Today I would meet my grandson. Today I would see Daniel's face for the first time. You have a visit at 11, Stephen, Ramirez informed me during breakfast. Looks like it's a special day. My grandson is coming today, I replied, unable to hide my excitement. After 15 years, I'm finally going to meet him. Ramirez smiled. One of the few guards who treated me like a human being, and not just another number in the prison system. I'm happy for you. You deserve something good after all this time. The hours dragged on with torturous slowness. I tried to distract myself by reading, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind was full of questions. Would he look like me? Would he have the same serious expression that Michael had as a child? What exactly had his father told him about me? At 11:15, they led me to the visiting room. They sat me at one of the central tables, and I waited, my heart beating so hard I was afraid it would burst out of my chest. And then I saw them enter. Sarah Quiroz, older than I remembered, but with the same kind eyes, and next to her, a tall, thin boy, with my same square jaw and my eyes, those eyes that look back at me from the mirror every morning. Daniel, my grandson. I stood up, staggering slightly. The boy stood still for a moment, watching me, studying me with an intensity that reminded me of myself. Then he walked forward with a determined step and, to my surprise, hugged me tightly. "Grandpa," he said simply, and that one word was enough to break the dam of emotions I had held back for so many years. The three of us sat at the table, Sarah with an excited smile, Daniel still studying me with that attentive gaze that seemed to miss no detail. "You look a lot like your grandmother," I finally said, breaking the silence. "You have her same expression when she's thinking hard." "Really?" Daniel asked, surprised. "Dad never talks about her. He says it's too painful." "Your grandmother Linda was an extraordinary woman," Sarah intervened. "Strong, hard-working, with a great sense of justice. She died believing I was guilty," I added bitterly. "That's what hurts me the most about all this." Daniel nodded, as if processing every word, every gesture. "Grandpa, I've been doing research for my school project. I've spoken to several people from the old neighborhood, not just Mrs. Quiroz. No one seems to believe you were capable of stealing. They all remember you as an honest, hard-working man." "I was," I replied simply. "I am. I also found something in that box I mentioned," Daniel continued, lowering his voice and looking around to make sure no guard was close enough to hear. "Old photos, documents, and this." He discreetly pulled a small folded paper from his pocket and passed it to me under the table. I took it carefully and opened it on my lap. It was a receipt, yellowed with time, from a travel agency, a ticket to Panama in the name of Michael Olmedo, dated the day after the robbery. "Dad always said he never tried to run, that he stayed to face the scandal when you were arrested," Daniel explained. "But this receipt proves he was planning to escape." I completed, feeling another piece of the puzzle fall into place. He probably changed his plans when the police arrested me instead of him. He saw a better opportunity to stay, inherit everything of mine, and not be pursued. Daniel nodded gravely. "There's more, Grandpa. I found old bank statements, large sums of money coming in and out of an account in Dad's name in the months leading up to the robbery. Too much money for his salary at the time." I looked at him with pride and amazement. My grandson was not only smart, but brave. He was investigating his own father, facing a truth that could destroy his world. "Daniel," Sarah intervened with a worried tone, "does your father know you're here today?" The boy shook his head. "I told him I was going to the library to do research for my project. He doesn't suspect a thing." "You have to be careful," I warned him, feeling a pang of fear for him. "Michael can be unpredictable when he feels cornered." "I know," Daniel replied, with a maturity beyond his 15 years. "I've seen him get angry when I ask too many questions. That's why I started investigating on my own." "What else have you discovered?" I asked, increasingly impressed with my grandson. "I've looked for information on Lawrence Montgomery, as you suggested in your last letter. He lives in Chicago now. He's an important businessman. But the interesting thing is that he and Dad are still in touch. I saw them together a month ago, arguing heatedly in a cafe. Dad seemed to be asking him for something, almost begging. I exchanged a meaningful look with Sarah. This confirmed what Guzman had told us about the complicity between Michael and Lawrence. "I've also spoken with the lawyer, Montesinos," Daniel continued. "He sought me out at school. He told me they're gathering evidence to reopen your case." "Montesinos contacted you?" I asked, surprised and a little worried. We hadn't agreed to involve Daniel directly in the legal aspects. "I contacted him," Daniel clarified. "I found his number in your letters. I thought he could help me with my school project." The boy smiled, and for the first time, I saw a flash of mischief in him. The school project had become a perfect excuse for his investigation. Grandpa, he continued, now more serious, there's something else you should know. Dad's in trouble, big trouble. He has debts, a lot of debts. I overheard a phone call. They were threatening him. They said if he didn't pay soon, they would come after me. A shiver ran down my spine. If Michael was being threatened, if he felt his son was in danger, how far would he go to get money? What would he do if he discovered that Daniel was helping to prove my innocence? Daniel, maybe you should stay away from all this, I suggested, feeling my desire for justice clash with my instinct to protect my grandson. It's too dangerous. No, he replied firmly. I've lived 15 years believing a lie, 15 years without knowing my grandfather. I'm not backing down now. His determination reminded me so much of Linda that I felt a lump in my throat. My wife had had that same firmness, that same unshakable conviction. Besides, he added, I've taken precautions. I've made copies of all the important documents and left them in a safe place. And I'm not alone in this. Mrs. Quiros helps me, and now Mr. Montesinos too. Sarah nodded, supporting Daniel. And Judge Montalvo is interested in the case. He's known for his integrity, for correcting old injustices. I sighed, knowing I couldn't dissuade them, and deep down, I didn't want to. After 25 years, the truth was finally within our reach. What's the plan, then? I asked. Montesinos will file a formal request to reopen the case, Sarah explained. With Guzman's testimony, the documents Daniel has found, and the forensic analysis of the signatures, there might be enough evidence to at least get a review. In the meantime, Daniel continued, I'll keep gathering information. There's something else in that box that I haven't been able to fully review yet. An old notebook with Dad's notes. It's in code, but I think I can decipher it. And what if Michael finds out what you're doing? I asked, unable to hide my concern. That's why I'm coming to see you as part of my school project, Daniel replied with a cunning smile. It's the perfect excuse, and Dad is too worried about his own problems to pay much attention. The visit continued for another hour. Daniel asked me many questions about my life before prison, about his grandmother, about how I had built our house. I told him stories I had kept for 25 years, watching his eyes light up as he heard about his heritage, about the family he never got to know. When the guard announced that visiting time was over, I felt a mix of sadness and hope. Sadness at having to say goodbye. Hope because, for the first time in 25 years, I felt that justice was possible. I'll be back next Saturday, Daniel promised as he hugged me goodbye, and I'll bring more information. I watched him walk away with Sarah, walking with that mix of determination and vulnerability so typical of youth. My grandson, the boy who was risking his relationship with his father to help a grandfather he barely knew. 3 days later, I received an unexpected visit. Judge Isaac Montalvo, a stern-looking man with a kind gaze, came to see me at the prison personally. Mr. Olmedo, he greeted me formally as we sat in a private room, away from the ears of other inmates or guards. I've been reviewing your case at the request of Mr. Montesinos. I appreciate it, Your Honor, I replied, impressed that a magistrate of his level would take the trouble to visit me personally. I must be honest with you, the judge continued. In my 30 years of career, I've seen many cases of people claiming to be innocent. Most of them are not, but in your case, there are irregularities that I cannot ignore. What kind of irregularities? I asked, feeling hope grow in my chest. For starters, the speed with which the trial took place. Less than 2 months between the arrest and the sentencing. For a case of that magnitude, that's unusually fast. Also, your public defender barely put up a defense. And Judge Salgado, who handled your case, had personal connections with the Montgomery family that were not disclosed. Personal connections? I asked, surprised by this new information. Judge Salgado was a first cousin of Mr. Montgomery's wife, the owner of the construction company. A clear conflict of interest that should have been grounds for him to recuse himself from the case. I felt rage and indignation wash over me. It had all been a sham from the beginning, a rigged trial to protect the real culprit. What does this mean for my case? I asked, trying to stay calm. It means there are legal grounds to request a full review, the judge replied, especially if we add to this the new evidence that is emerging. Guzman's testimony, the documents found by your grandson, and the preliminary results of the graphological analysis of your supposed signature on the construction company's documents. Preliminary results? I asked, surprised. I didn't know the analysis had already begun. Montesinos got access to some of the original documents, the judge explained. The experts are almost certain that the signatures were forged. The pressure, the angles, Certain unconscious patterns that we all have when we write do not match other known samples of your signature. For the first time in 25 years, I felt that justice was more than an empty word. It was a real, tangible possibility. However, the judge continued in a more serious tone. I must warn you that this process will not be easy or fast, and there are powerful people who would prefer that your case remain buried. Lawrence Montgomery has influence, connections, and his son, my son, will do whatever it takes to protect himself. I completed, knowing Michael all too well. The judge nodded. Precisely. That's why I want to ask you for something, Mr. Olmedo. Something difficult, but necessary. What is it? I need you to keep a low profile for now. Don't talk to anyone about the review of your case, except for Montesinos, Mrs. Quiros, and your grandson. Not even the guards or other inmates. The fewer people who know we're stirring this hornet's nest, the better. I nodded, understanding the need for discretion. And how long will all this take? Hard to say. Weeks, maybe months. Legal processes are slow, especially when it comes to overturning such an old sentence. But I promise you we are making progress. The judge stood up to leave, but paused for a moment longer. One last thing, Mr. Olmedo. Your grandson, Daniel, is an exceptional young man. He came to see me in my office, you know. He brought documents, asked precise, intelligent questions. He reminded me of myself at his age, when I decided I wanted to dedicate my life to justice. I smiled with pride. He has the best of his grandmother, her intelligence, her sense of what's right. Protect him, the judge added in a somber tone. His father will know soon enough, if he doesn't already, that the boy is investigating. And from what we've discovered about Michael Olmedo, he's not a man who stops at anything when he feels threatened. Those words haunted me for the next few days. My concern for Daniel grew with each passing hour. What if Michael found out what he was doing? What if he retaliated against his own son? On Thursday night, I received an urgent visit from Montesinos. His distraught face told me something serious had happened before he even spoke a word. "It's Daniel," he finally said, confirming my worst fears. Michael found out he was investigating. He sent him to a boarding school in Chicago, far from all of us. And there's more. He's filed a complaint against Mrs. Quiros for negatively influencing his minor son. I felt the world crumble around me. Daniel, my grandson, my hope, was now in Michael's hands, far from any help. How did he find out? I asked, feeling rage consume me. We're not sure. Maybe he found the documents Daniel had copied. Or maybe someone saw him coming here. The important thing now is that the boy is isolated, probably with no way to communicate with us. And Sarah? Is she okay? For now, yes. The complaint is ridiculous and will probably be dismissed, but he's managed to scare her, which was what Michael intended. I felt guilty, terribly guilty. For my desire for justice, I had endangered my grandson and an old woman who was only trying to help me. What can we do? I asked desperately. Move forward with the legal process, Montesinos replied firmly, now more than ever. Judge Montalvo is preparing an order to have all the original case documents analyzed, and Guzman has submitted his full sworn statement, with dates, amounts, precise details about how Michael and Lawrence siphoned off the money. But Daniel, we can't do anything for him directly, not now. Legally, Michael has every right to decide where his son studies. But if we can prove your innocence, if we can get the case reopened and Michael investigated, then Daniel will be free. I nodded, knowing Montesinos was right. The best way to help my grandson now was to continue with the legal process, to push for the truth to come out as soon as possible. That night, in the solitude of my cell, I wrote one more letter, not to Daniel, who probably couldn't receive it at that boarding school controlled by his father, not to Sarah, who was already doing more than I could ask of her. This letter was for Michael. Son, I wrote, feeling the word burn on the paper. I know what you've done. I know you've sent Daniel away to keep him from discovering the truth. But it's too late. The truth is already in motion, and neither you nor Lawrence will be able to stop it. I kept writing, letting 25 years of pain, anger, and disappointment flow through my words. I reminded him of everything I had sacrificed for him, every extra hour of work, every dollar saved for his education. I told him about his mother, how she had died believing I was a thief. I told him about the evidence we had gathered, about Guzman's testimony, about the analysis of the forged signatures. You still have time to do the right thing, Michael, I concluded. For Daniel. That boy deserves to know the truth. He deserves to have a father capable of owning his mistakes, A better father than you were as a son. I sealed the letter, knowing I would probably never send it. It was more for me than for Michael, a way to release everything I had held in for so many years. However, as I tucked it under my mattress, I was certain that the final battle was approaching. Michael had made his move, isolating Daniel, intimidating Sarah. Now it was our turn, and this time we had something we never had 25 years ago. Evidence, allies, and above all, the determination to finally bring the truth to light. What I didn't know then was that Michael had a much more dangerous plan than simply sending Daniel away or intimidating Sarah. A plan that would put at risk not only my case, but the very lives of those trying to help me. A week after Daniel was sent to the boarding school, I received an unexpected visit. The guard, Ramirez, woke me before dawn, his somber face barely illuminated by the dim light of the hallway. "Olmedo, get up. You have an urgent visitor." "At this hour?" I asked, confused. Visits were never allowed before the official time, which started at 9. "Director's orders," Ramirez replied, opening the cell. "Seems serious." He led me through silent corridors to a small room I had never seen before. It wasn't the usual visiting room, but an austere office with a metal table and 2 chairs. "Wait here," Ramirez said, and left, closing the door. A few minutes later, the door opened again. To my surprise, it wasn't Montesinos or Judge Montalvo who entered, as I had expected. It was Michael, my son, the man who had stolen 25 years of my life. "Dad," he said dryly, sitting down across from me. I watched him closely. At 47, Michael showed signs of a hard life I hadn't expected to see. Deep dark circles under his eyes, a gaunt face, slightly trembling hands. It wasn't the image of the prosperous man I had imagined enjoying my money and my house. "To what do I owe the honor?" I asked, unable to avoid the bitter tone. "After 5 years without visiting, what brings you here so early?" "You know perfectly well why I'm here," he replied, leaning toward me. "Daniel, Montesinos, Guzman, Judge Montalvo. You've been very busy lately, so have you, sending your son to a boarding school so he won't find out the truth." Michael smiled, but it was a cold, calculating smile. "The truth? Your version of the truth?" Daniel was confused, influenced by that old meddler Quiroz. "I sent him to the boarding school for his own good. You sent him to silence him," I corrected. "Just like you filed that false complaint against Sarah. You're scared, Michael. Scared because the truth is finally coming out." For a moment I saw a flash of something in his eyes. Fear? Guilt? It disappeared so quickly I couldn't identify it. "Listen to me carefully, Dad," he said, lowering his voice. "I've come to offer you a deal, the last one you'll get from me. I'm not interested in your deals. You'll be interested in this one. Stop this whole legal circus right now. Tell Montesinos to drop the case. Convince Guzman to withdraw his testimony. In return, I'll let Daniel visit you regularly, every month, and I'll send you money so your last years here are more comfortable." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. After everything he had done, he still had the audacity to offer me a bribe. "Do you really think you can buy me? That I'll give up clearing my name for a few visits and some money?" "Don't be naive," Michael replied, his tone hardening. "You don't have any real options. Do you think after 25 years anyone is going to reopen your case? That a judge is going to accept the testimony of a dying man and some old documents? Judge Montalvo seems to think so." Michael let out a dismissive laugh. "Montalvo is an idealist. But this isn't a world for idealists, Dad. It's a world for practical people, people who know how things really work. People like you," I said, not hiding my contempt. "People who betray their own family for money." I saw Michael's mask of control crack for a moment. "You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know anything about my reasons. Then enlighten me. Explain to me what could justify sending your own father to prison for 25 years. Michael ran a hand over his face, a gesture of weariness that painfully reminded me of the insecure young man he had once been, before ambition consumed him. "I was trapped," he finally said. "I had gambled. I owed a lot of money to dangerous people. They threatened me, not just me, but Mom too. They said if I didn't pay them, she would have an accident." I looked at him, stunned. "And that's why you stole the money from the construction company? Because of gambling debts?" At first, I only took small amounts, thinking I could pay them back. But the debts grew, and then Lawrence offered me a plan. The big score. $3 million. Enough to pay off my debts and start over. "And you decided to blame me?" "That was Lawrence's idea. He said we needed a scapegoat, someone who looked guilty. He forged your signature, On the documents. I hid part of the money under your bedroom floor the night before the arrest. The suitcase, the one Sarah saw. Now it all made sense. And your mother? Did Linda know the truth? Michael's expression darkened. Not at first. But I think she suspected. Towards the end, before she died, she asked me directly. I couldn't lie to her face, so she died knowing her son had betrayed her husband, that I was innocent. I felt a mix of relief and pain. At least Linda had known the truth before she passed. But the money ran out, didn't it? I continued, observing the evident wear on Michael. You squandered it all. Things got complicated, he admitted. Lawrence betrayed me. He kept most of it. Then came bad investments, more gambling trying to win back what I lost. And now I'm in debt again, to the same dangerous people, and Daniel is in danger, I concluded, now understanding his desperation. That's why you sent him to the boarding school. Not just to keep him from the truth, but to protect him. Michael nodded slightly. I need money, a lot of money, fast. And Lawrence has that money. But now he's blackmailing me. He says if your case is reopened, if there's an investigation, he'll make sure I take all the blame. So you came to ask me to stop everything to save yourself. Again, to save all of us, Michael corrected. If Lawrence feels cornered, I don't know what he'd be capable of. He's already threatened Guzman. What? Alarm washed over me. He's threatened Guzman? Lawrence has contacts everywhere. He found out about the testimony Guzman prepared for the judge. Yesterday, he sent someone to visit him at the hospital. Just a warning for now. But next time. I felt my blood run cold. Guzman, terminally ill, was now also under threat for trying to do the right thing. And what about Montesinos? And Judge Montalvo? Are they in danger too? Michael didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. This has gone too far, I said, slamming the table in frustration. We need to stop Lawrence before he hurts someone. Stop him? How? He's untouchable. He has money, influence, contacts. We have proof, Michael. Your testimony could be the final piece. My son looked at me as if I had lost my mind. My testimony? Are you suggesting I incriminate myself? I'm suggesting you do the right thing. For once in your life, for Daniel, for your son. I saw the conflict in his face, the internal struggle between the instinct for self-preservation and what was left of his conscience. I can't go to prison, he finally said. I wouldn't survive a year in here. You don't have to. There's another way. I explained my plan, one that had been forming in my mind as we spoke. Michael would cooperate with Judge Montalvo, providing a full testimony against Lawrence Montgomery, detailing how he had been the mastermind behind the robbery, how he had forged my signature, how he had orchestrated the whole cover-up. In return, Judge Montalvo could offer him a deal, a suspended sentence, maybe house arrest, in exchange for his full cooperation. It wasn't complete justice, but it was a compromise that could work. Lawrence will come after me, Michael said, clearly scared. He'll kill me. Not if he's behind bars. With your testimony, Guzman's, and all the evidence we've gathered, he has little chance of escaping. It's him or you, Michael. And this time, you can't sacrifice me. I saw the exact moment he made his decision. A slight slump of his shoulders, a resigned exhale. All right, he finally said. I'll talk to Judge Montalvo. I'll tell him everything. And Daniel, I added, he needs to come home. He needs to be safe. I'll bring him back, Michael promised. Today, as I watched my son leave, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger for what he had done to me, relief for finally hearing the truth from his own lips, and a persistent worry. Michael had given in too easily, and I knew my son well enough to know that he never gave up without a backup plan. My suspicions were confirmed 2 days later, when Montesinos came to see me with alarming news. Michael has disappeared, he informed me. His face was grave. He went to get Daniel from the boarding school as he promised, but they never made it home. The police are looking for them now. I felt the floor open up beneath me. Do you think he's running away, taking Daniel with him? It's a possibility. Or maybe Montesinos left the sentence unfinished, but we were both thinking the same thing. Maybe Lawrence Montgomery had decided to eliminate the problem at its source. We need to find them, I said desperately. Daniel could be in danger. Judge Montalvo has contacted authorities across the state. There's also a watch order at the borders and airports. They'll find them. But the days passed with no news. Every hour that went by increased my anguish. Where were they? Were they safe? A week after Michael and Daniel's disappearance, I received a letter. It had no return address, and the guard who gave it to me said it had been left at the prison reception with no further explanation. I opened it with trembling hands, immediately recognizing Daniel's handwriting. "Dear Grandpa," it began, "if you're reading this, it means we're safe. I can't tell you where we are, for our safety and yours. Dad finally told me the whole truth, about the robbery, about how he framed you, about everything. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence is undeniable." I felt a lump in my throat as I continued reading. "Lawrence Montgomery sent men to find us. They wanted to silence Dad before he could testify. We had to run. We're in hiding, but we're safe. And we have something important, Grandpa. The notebook. The one I mentioned before. It contains all the details of the plan. Dates, amounts, names. Dad kept it as insurance, in case Lawrence ever betrayed him. My heart skipped a beat. That notebook could be the definitive proof we needed. We've sent copies to Judge Montalvo and Mr. Montesinos. The originals are safe, in a place where Lawrence will never find them. We're waiting for things to calm down, for Lawrence to be arrested. Then, we'll come back." The letter continued with words of hope, with the promise of a future where we could finally be together as a family. It ended with a postscript that made me smile despite the circumstances. "P.S. Dad wants you to know he's sorry. It's not just words, Grandpa. I see it in his eyes. He's truly sorry. And he's trying to do the right thing. Finally." Events moved quickly in the following weeks. With the evidence from Michael's notebook, Judge Montalvo obtained an arrest warrant for Lawrence Montgomery. He was arrested trying to flee the country, carrying a suitcase full of money and documents that, ironically, only served to incriminate him further. The case was officially reopened. Forensic analysis confirmed that my signature had been forged. Guzman's testimony, now protected by the police, provided the necessary context to understand how the entire conspiracy had unfolded. And then, a month after their disappearance, Michael and Daniel returned. They appeared at the courthouse one morning, escorted by federal agents who had kept them in a witness protection program. Michael testified. He told the whole truth, confirming every detail of my version of events. He described how Lawrence had planned the robbery, how he had hidden the money in our house, how they had both manipulated the evidence to frame me. Judge Montalvo, true to his word, offered him a deal. 5 years of house arrest and the return of all assets acquired with the stolen money, in exchange for his full testimony against Lawrence and other accomplices who emerged during the investigation. And finally, the moment I had waited for 25 years arrived. Judge Montalvo delivered his ruling. My conviction had been a miscarriage of justice. I was innocent. I would be released immediately. But there was a problem, a legal technicality that no one had foreseen. Due to the age of the case and certain quirks in the law, my release required the governor's signature, a formality that could take weeks, even months. So, despite being declared innocent, I was still in prison, waiting for a piece of paper to officially grant me my freedom. It was during that waiting period that I received the most important visit of all. Daniel came alone, without Michael, who had begun serving his house arrest. "Grandpa," my grandson said, hugging me tightly, "Judge Montalvo says the governor will sign your release next week. You'll finally be free." I hugged him back, feeling a mix of emotions so intense I could barely speak. This boy, this brave and intelligent kid, had been the key to bringing the truth to light. Without him, without his determination, I would still be number 4, 5, 8, 7, 3, condemned to die within these walls. "There's something else," Daniel continued, smiling. "Mrs. Quiroz and I have been working on a surprise for when you get out. We're rebuilding your house." "My house?" I asked, confused. "But Michael sold it years ago." "We bought it back," Daniel explained, "with the money Lawrence had to return as part of his plea deal. It's not exactly the same, of course. The new owner made changes, but we're restoring it to be as close as possible to how it was before, based on old photos and Mrs. Quiroz's memories." I felt tears roll down my cheeks. My house, the one I had built with my own hands. I was going to get it back. "And there's a room for you," Daniel added, "next to mine. We'll live together, Grandpa. You, me, and yes, Dad too," when he finishes his sentence. "We'll be a family, a real family." I looked at him, amazed by his capacity to forgive, to see beyond the harm his father had caused. "Will you ever be able to forgive him?" Daniel asked me, suddenly serious. "Dad, I know what he did was terrible, but he's trying to change, to do things right." I thought about Michael, the boy he had been, the man he had become, the terrible decisions he had made, and the remorse he now showed. Forgiveness is a journey, I finally replied. A long journey. I can't promise you I'll reach the end of that road soon, Daniel, but I can promise you that I'll try to take the first steps. My grandson nodded, satisfied with that honest answer. When he left, I thought about everything that had happened, about the 25 lost years and the future that was now opening up before me. A future outside these walls. A future with Daniel, and even perhaps a reconciliation with Michael. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. But for the first time in 25 years, I had something I had lost long ago. Hope. A week later, just as Daniel had predicted, the release order signed by the governor arrived. I gathered the few belongings I had accumulated in a quarter-century of confinement. Some letters, an old watch, the worn-out books that had been my only companions during so many lonely years. The guard Ramirez was the one who accompanied me to the main gate. "Good luck out there, Stephen," he said, shaking my hand. "I always knew you were different from the others." I nodded, grateful for the small gestures of humanity he had shown me over all those years. And then the gates opened. The sunlight hit me with an intensity that almost hurt after so much time under the artificial light of the prison, and there, waiting for me, were Daniel and Sarah Quiros. My grandson ran to me, hugging me so tightly he almost made me lose my balance. Sarah approached more slowly, with tears in her eyes and a smile that lit up her aged face. "Welcome home, Stephen," she said simply. Home. After 25 years, I was finally coming home. Not to the physical house, although to that too, but to the real home. Freedom, truth, family. As I walked towards the car that was waiting for us, with Daniel's arm around my shoulders and Sarah's hand held firmly in mine, I felt that, for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The road to full reconciliation, to rebuilding everything I had lost, would be long. But now I had time. Time outside those walls. Time to get to know my grandson. Time to return to the house I had built with my own hands. Time, perhaps, to find a space in my heart for forgiveness. And as the car pulled away from the prison that had been my home for 25 years, I looked back one last time, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with the certainty that, despite everything they had taken from me, something essential had survived. My dignity, my truth, and now, finally, my freedom. If you were moved by my story of injustice and redemption, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week I share real stories that, like mine, will leave you breathless until the end.